Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And also honor and salutations to those of you who are the hopeful elect and are out there teaching the word in sincerity and truth. Alright, so I wanted to get into this topic. I was watching the Elder Yashawamba show. This a few days ago I was watching it, but I wrote down in my notes. What I wrote down in my notes was, let me look here. What I wrote down in my notes was Apocrypha. Why people don't understand the term Jew nor Greek, or Greek nor Jew. And I got that from watching this show right here. What advantage hath the Jew? In history you should know. Romans 3. Right, so I was taking a look at that. I was watching this one too over the last couple days too. It's pretty good, but this is where I got the inspiration for this topic here, and the elder made a good point. He said that from you go from Malachi to Matthew, and a lot of that history, if you're only reading the Bible, is missing, right? And the Apocrypha, in particular, First and Second Maccabees, chronicles a lot of that time in between Malachi and Matthew, let's say, or let's say Malachi and the Gospels, because the Gospels are chronicling the same time, just from different points of view, right? And so I want to get into First Maccabees, but I got some articles and some other things pulled up to explain that the Greek, or let's say the Grecians, right, when it's mentioned in the so-called New Testament, that it's talking about Israelites, right? And the reason why they're being called Grecians or Greeks is really explained in Maccabees, the first chapter, right? And the more and more we go into these types of topics, the more I realize that I hate to say the more I realize, because I've always known it, but let's say, for lack of a better term, the more I realize that the scriptures have never been for anybody else. It is, they have never been for anybody else but the children of Israel, right? And the New Testament, right, as it's called, is really those Israelite foreigners, right, coming back into the understanding and the customs, and as the elder mentions in that show, the oracles of the Most High, right? They're coming back to understanding those things. And so, that's where I got the inspiration for the show from. That's what we're going to go through. And as always, hopefully it's edifying. So the first thing I want to do is go here to the word Apocrypha, right? It says biblical or related writings not forming part of the accepted canon of Scripture, right? But what I found down here is this right here, that the literal meaning of it is to hide away. Let's see, in biblical literature, work outside an accepted canon of Scripture, the history of the term's usage indicates that it referred to a body of esoteric writings that were at first prized, later tolerated, and finally excluded, right? So to hide away, right? So, um, yeah, Salakia. So it means to hide away, right? Uh, Crip or krifa is like to say to hide, right? Like a crypt, like when you have that. Remember that show back in the day, the Tales from the Crypt. A crypt is like a grave. That's you gotta go down into the lower levels of a, let's say, a temple or a church or build some building, right? Because it's hidden and it's hidden, right? And apo obviously means to send, right? To send secretly, or to secretly send, or to hide, right? And so a lot of history, let's say, is hidden in the Apocrypha, right? And so when you go into the Apocrypha, it touches on a lot of that Hellenization that happened um, to the Israelites. Now, the term Hellen in and of itself, right, or Hellenized, just is the term that was used um, for, let's say, Alexander's conquering of the known world at the time, right? But when you go into the scriptures and you see the word, it gets more specific to what that meaning is, right? And I don't have a Zondervan's Bible Dictionary. I wish I did. I probably did at some point. Um, but when you go into the word Helen in the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, it says Jews that make Greek their language, right? So it's specifically Jews that it speaks about in the scriptures when it's mentioning Helen, right? So I'll show you some of that, right? Not that yet. Where was it? This one right here. So I tried to pull this up. This is an online Bible dictionary, and I put in the word Helen, and it gave me these two scriptures, which I should go to. Did I pull them up? Yeah. So let's go to this one first. This is Acts 6:1. Let's read it here first. It says, this is the NIV, right? It says, in those days when the number of disciples was increasing, the Hellenistic Jews among them complained against the Hebraic Jews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food, right? So when you go here, right, it says Hellenistic Jews, right? But let's look at the word as there in the King James, right? Acts 6:1. It says, in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians, see, against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration, right? So when you go to this word Grecians, or when you go back to there and you see Hellenistic, right? Let's do that. You'll get the word Hellenistas. I'll show you in the Texas Receptus real quick, right here. Hellenistas, right? Or when you go, let's say, or let me see so you can really see it. Multiply Grecians right here. Hellenistas, right? So the Hellenistas, if my memory serves me correctly, were the Israelites who were practicing Greek customs or had been moved away into Greek languages, right? But knew that they were Israelites, right? And then when you see the word Hellen, right, without this ist or istas on the end, were those who were practicing the Greek customs that didn't know that they were Israelites, right? And so let's keep going here. Let's go back to that real quick, right? So when you look here at Grecians, you would think in your mind, oh, that's talking about the Greeks, right? But it's Grecian is a specific word again, the Hellenistic Jews, right? So the scholars understood this when they put this together. Hellenistic Jews um, complained against the Hebraic Jews, right? So they were all Israelites. Matter of fact, let's go here and let's go to what is it? Acts 2, right? This is one of our go-tos for this topic. Acts 2 and 5, it says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, right, devout men out of every nation under heaven, right? And I always use the example of Esther, where you go into Esther 1 and 1, it'll tell you that Ahasuerus ruled over 127 provinces, right? And as the story ensues, you understand that all these provinces had letters written to them, commanding them to kill the Israelites, right? And so our people then had to have been in all 127 of these provinces, right? And it'll tell you from India, which is furthest east of his empire, to Ethiopia, which is furthest west of his empire, right? And that's the proof that our people were in all of these different lands, right? So by the time you get to Alexander, right? Matter of fact, I had a map that came up when I was looking up Hellen. Let's try it again. See if I can find that one map. Let's go. Hellen. Oh, damn, I can't type for shit today. Hellen. What the hell is going on here? Hellen. Let's see. Hellenistic. Let me try this first. Here we go. Right here. Right. So by the time you get to Alexander, right, who is from this area here, right, and conquered all of these lands here, right, you have to know and understand that our people were already in these lands, right? So when this Hellenization period starts, right, when Alexander begins conquering all the known lands, right, our people were already in these lands, right? They were already here. Let's just go to this real quick. I like to read this anyway. Esther 1. Okay. Esther 1 and 1, it says, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even to Ethiopia, over 107 and 20 provinces, right? So when you go to this map, India is about, I want to say right here. Let's see a clearer map. Right? India is about right here. So from India and Ethiopia, as we know, is down around right here if you extended this map. So all of these lands, right, Ahasuerus ruled over, and our people were in these lands. So by the time Alexander starts conquering these lands, even though they were, whoever was dwelling in these lands, right, the Medes, the Parthians, and whatever else it says in Acts the 2nd chapter, we can go back to that. But in all those lands, right, Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Elamites, right, Parthians, Medes, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, right, all of these lands, our people were already in them when Alexander began to conquer them, right? And so once you get to, let's say, the Gospels, when the Lord Yahushua came on the scene, right, and then into the book of Acts, our people had already been, let's say, removed and started practicing the other customs of the lands that they were in, but then that was deepened, right, or expanded when Alexander came through and conquered, right? So let's keep going here with some of this information. Did that. So I wanted to read this right here. What do I have here? What's this right here? I read that already. Go to that in a second. All right. So I wanted to read this here, right? So when you type in, Hellenistic or Hellen, you get a lot of information. A lot of stuff comes up. But this is I took the things that I felt were notable in here. I highlighted this. I'll read that in a second. I wanted to just read this piece first. Boom. Let's start right here. This is the opening verse of Acts 6 points to the problematic cultural divisions between Hellenized Jews and Aramaic speaking Israelites in Jerusalem, right? A disunion that reverberated within the emerging Christian community itself, right? So as this new doctrine was being established, right? That the Lord Yahweh Shai was the way, right? Um, there was a let's say dissension, right? Where there was a problem between the circumcision and the uncircumcision, right? And as the Elder Yashawamba touches on that show, I recommend you watch that one too. That was a big tension between those two, right? And this is why the scriptures say things like this when you go to let's go, I think it's Ephesians, where it says middle wall of partition. Let's go to Ephesians. Where are you at? Ephesians, I think it's 2, and where it says boom, boom. Let's start at 11. It says it's Ephesians 2 and 11. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision, right? Those are the two parties in the flesh made by hands, that at the time ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, right? So they had whatever, for whatever reason. It could have been due to the Assyrian captivity, it could have been the Babylonian captivity, it could have been for war, it could have been for all different types of things, right? But they had already been dispersed throughout those lands for centuries, right? Hundreds of years, right? And some of them were strangers from the covenants, right? So they didn't know about the prophecy of the Lord Yahweh Shai, because that was something that was happening amongst Israel, right? When you go to, what is that, where he says, we have found the Christ, something along those lines, or that which is being interpreted, we have found the Messiah, we have found Messiahs, which is being interpreted, which being interpreted, I think that's how you spell it, yeah. Let's see. We found, I think I want to say it's like that, but I'm not sure. Yep. This is John 1 and 41. Let's go up in there a little bit. 1 and 41. Let's go to 40. John 1 and 40. It says, one of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first findeth his own brother Simon, and saith unto him, we have found the Messiah, which is being interpreted, the Christ, right? So this is talking about the Lord Yahweh Shai. So to say you found something, right, you had to know, right, that this was being talked about in Israel, right? The Messiah is coming. The Messiah is coming, right? And now they're saying, look, we found him. So when you go back to Ephesians, right, where it says strangers from the covenants of promise, they didn't know. They didn't have any idea of, first and foremost, the covenants that was made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they had been so far removed from it. But they also didn't know about the prophecy of a Messiah coming to reconcile the nation of Israel to the Heavenly Father, because they didn't even know. They didn't have any idea, right? So it says, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. But now in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach, right? For he is our peace, who hath made both one, right? Both what? The uncircumcision and the circumcision, right? And hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us, right? Why was there a middle wall of partition between them? Because there was great tension between the circumcision and the uncircumcision, right? That had been at this time going on for hundreds of years, man, right? The LDR show, you got to watch that show, man, because it was beautifully put together. When you get to the Maccabees, right? Judas Maccabees and his brothers and their father. When you get into that history, they were killing. Matter of fact, let me look in here. Let me just go to that. I think it's First Maccabees, the second chapter. Just bear with me for a second here. I'm just gonna find the account. Yep, here we go, right here. Let me pull it up on the screen here. It's First Maccabees 2:20. Let's go there. First Maccabees 2:20. First Maccabees 2:20. First Maccabees 2:20. Let's go. Let's go up a little bit and read a little bit of this. Yep. I gotta go up a little bit. I might have to go to the first verse. All right, let's go to the first verse. This is a little bit of reading, so bear with me. But this is good history, right? It says, in those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jorib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin, right? It says, and he had 5 sons: Johanan, called Cadiz; Simon, called Thesai or Thessi; Judas, who was called Maccabeus; Eleazar, called Avaran; and Jonathan, whose surname was Apis. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see the misery of my people and of the holy city, to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers? Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? Salakia, 1 second. Okay. It says, what nation have not had part in her kingdom or gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is become a bond slave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Right? It says this. Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with the sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also. And such as remain at Jerusalem, so shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Right? So Mattathias and his sons, they were dwelling at Modin, right? And the king's officers went there to have them do the same thing that they had done in Jerusalem, right? Which is basically make them sell out and bow down, right? And so here's Mattathias' response. He says, Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Right? Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar, right? So Mattathias was the first to kill an Israelite who was like behaving himself like a heathen, right? And when you go down the line, Paul was a part of that, right? When he was Saul, right? So there was a great tension between anybody who was trying to change the customs of our forefathers, and then those who didn't mind the change. That strain between those two sides was heavy, man. Okay, so that's why it says here that there was a middle wall of partition between us, right? Having abolished in the flesh the enmity, right? Even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace, right? So this was a big deal. This history was deep and let's say enriched, and it had lasted for many years, right? So let's keep going, right? Let's go back to this. It says, it speaks of Hellenists and Hebrews. The existence of those two distinct groups characterizes the earliest Christian community in Jerusalem, right? So you got those two groups again, like I said, the uncircumcision and the circumcision, right? Or the middle wall of partition between the two, right? The Hebrews were Jewish Christians who spoke almost exclusively Aramaic, and the Hellenists were also Jewish Christians whose mother tongue was Greek, right? They were Greek-speaking Jews of the diaspora, right? The dispersion or spread of a people from their original homeland, people who have spread or been dispersed from their homeland, the dispersion of the Jewish people beyond Israel, right? Who returned to settle in Jerusalem. Oh, man. I don't know how you could see it any other way. But anyway, it says to identify them, Luke uses the term Helleniste, right? When he had in mind Greeks, Gentiles, non-Jews who spoke Greek and lived according to the Greek fashion, then he used the word Hellenes, right? Acts 21 and 28. As the very context of Acts 6 makes clear, the Helleniste are not Hellens, right? So they make a distinction between those who were Jews and those who weren't, right? So when you go up here, oh, because I highlighted something else, but I think I know where it was. Right here. All right, so here we go, right? It says Hellenization was evident in the religious Jewish establishment, right? Honi became Menelaus, Joshua became Jason or Jesus. The Hellenistic influence pervaded, or like this is to say, like to spread everything, and even in the very strongholds of Judaism, it modified the organization of the state, the laws and public affairs, arts, science, and industry, affecting even the ordinary things of life and the common associations of the people. The inscription forbidding strangers to advance beyond a certain point in the temple was in Greek, and was probably made necessary by the presence of numerous Jews from Greek-speaking countries at the time of the festivals, right? Compare the murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, Acts 6 and 1, which they just read down the bottom there. The coffers in the temple, which contained the shekel contributions, were marked with Greek letters. It is therefore no wonder that there were synagogues of the Libertines, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, Cilicians, and Asiatics in the holy city, right? So this is Acts 6 and 9. So let's go to that. All right. So it says, then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, the Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. Right. So these were Israelites. Right. They had their own synagogue. So in other words, you could go right to Israel or wherever, to a synagogue that would be teaching you about your history, your culture, right? You could be from any of these places because they would speak in your language, right? Which they go into in Acts the second chapter, right? But let's prove something else. Let's go to Acts 11 here, all right? Acts 11 and 19. It says, now they which were scattered abroad upon the persecution that arose about Stephen traveled as far as Phoenice and Cyprus and Antioch, preaching the word to none but the Jews only. Were they making a mistake? Were they making a mistake? Right? And some of them were men of Cyprus and Cyrene, which when they were come to Antioch spake unto the Grecians, preaching the Lord Yahushai. Right? Let's look that word Grecian to show you. Where are we at? Boom. Hellenistus again. All right? You see? Right? Let's read this. A Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. Used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. Right? All right, let's keep going. Let's go to Acts 9 here. I think it was 29. Yep. And he spake boldly in the name of the Lord Yahushua and disputed against the Grecians, but they went about to slay him. Right? That word Grecian again. Hellenistus. Right? Same thing. Right? So these were Israelites. Right? When it says neither Jew nor Greek, when it says neither Greek nor Jew, right? It is talking about Israelites, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who had been dispersed through other lands for whatever reason, right? Whether it's through slavery or military means or all different kinds of reasons when you go into the history, right? Mostly because of slavery. So when you see that in the New Testament, right? Those people are Israelites, man. It's very simple, right? So let's go to back to First Maccabees. Was the original topic of the show, and just let's go through and read some of that history. Actually, let me do this. I wanted to show something, right? Because the elder Yashawamba made a good point in that, from Malachi to the Gospels, that's a lot of time, right? So I pulled this up. I said, I googled when did Malachi teach, right, or when did he live? Right, so Malachi is about right here in this gap in time right here, right? So let's say the 5th century, right? And so from the 5th century, actually, what did I pull up? I pulled up another one that was more clear. Don't tell me I got rid of it. Here it goes. Right, so you got Malachi here. Let's say about in between 516 and 525, right? And then, right, you got all of this history in between here. Right, so this is important to note, right? Because you got the Persians here that ruled all in these times, right? The reason why that's important because what we read in Esther, right? So you got let's see, Esther becomes queen of Persia, right? In here. And then after that time, right, you got Alexander that takes over, right? And then all of this Greek history here, all the way up into Herod, right? So again, you have the Maccabees or the book of Maccabees that goes into this more explicitly, right? So we'll read some of that. Okay. So this is First Maccabees 1 and 1. It says, and it happened after Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. Right. So Alexander. I'm saying Alexander. Philip. Right. If you go into the history a little bit, mostly in the Josephus, it'll tell you that this guy, Philip the Macedonian, he wanted those prophecies that it spoke about the goat in I think it's Daniel the 8th chapter. He wanted it to be him, but it ended up being his son, who was the one who rose up and conquered most of the known world. Right. It said, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should. I think I skipped something here. Yep. All right. Yep. Yep. And nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore, I'm sorry. That's why I'm getting confused. Alexander is what this is talking about. I'm saying Philip, but Philip the history I gave about Philip is accurate, but this is speaking about Alexander when he came into power, right? And it says, and after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die, wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. Right? So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bear rule, everyone in his place. So I think it's Cassander, Lysimaeus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, right? And so most of the most of the empire, most of the world that was conquered at the time was split between Ptolemy and Seleucus, right? The other two kind of get phased out a little bit in history. But Seleucus was like, let's go back to that. Let's see if I can find that map there. So Seleucus had this. Oh, it says it right here. So you had Seleucus who had this part, right? You had Lysimaeus and Cassander up here, and then Ptolemy had this part, right? And really, they were kind of between the Seleucus Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. They were fighting over this middle piece right here where Israel is, and it ended up being conquered eventually by the Seleucid Empire. I can actually show you that. Judea is conquered by Alexander, and then Antiochus, right? It says the Jewish rebel. Where did I see that earlier? It was 200. Judea comes under the control of Seleucid kings again, right? So they were the ones who ruled over. So when you read about, we're getting ready to read about Antiochus, he was of the Seleucid line, right? So let's keep going here. Boom. Yep. Verse 9, it says, and after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth, right? And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. And those days went there out of Israel wicked men, right, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, right? So a lot of our people were with it. They wanted to be a part of the Greekish fashion, right? They wanted to be Hellenized, right? Partly due to wanting to join in with the wickedness, but then also being afraid to die, right? It says, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow, right? So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief, right? Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion of 2 realms, right? Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude of chariots, elephants, and horsemen, and a great navy, right? So you can read this. I just want to read. I want to get down into this because this is really the point of the Hellenization here. Let's First Maccabees 1:41. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Right? And so this is how, when you get to, again, the Gospels and then the book of Acts, and then all those letters that were written to all the churches, this is how you get that Hellen or Hellenist or Grecian or Greeks or Jews, right? This is where you get that conversation from, because our people were being Hellenized by the Greeks, right? So with that, you can read this. I didn't read all of it, but hopefully that was edifying. I want to give all praises to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai B'Shem Chak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Honor and salutation to the elect. With that, I say shalom.